Good morning, folks. John Havlicek here with another edition of Common Grounds, where we share some grounds. Today I've got a medium roast, and we talk about the common ground that you and I have in the political issues of the day, regardless of how we vote. All right. Talk about a couple things here today. So I've been reading up on these data centers. This project in Port Washington is moving ahead, and there are some other data centers in various stages of planning around the state. And I think it's something that we really need to take slowly, right? I like the idea of jobs. I like the idea of economic driver kind of stuff, but really concerned by a couple of things. Number one, they use a ton of water, and they have to dispose of the contaminated water very carefully. And I know they say they will, but everybody says they will until they don't. Okay? And then the second thing is the amount of electricity these data centers use. It's staggering. It's not like they use as much electricity as the city block I live on. No, it's like they use as much electricity as the city I live in, or the greater metropolitan area that I live in here in La Crosse. Like, it's unreal. And they talk about, building facilities to generate electricity, but it never seems to match up. And so I don't know how that's not going to translate to higher electrical costs for you and I. And then there's talk about these would overload the grid. Like, it would just be too much for the grid to handle. So the grid would need to be updated. Who's going to pay for that? The data centers or you and I? So, this is really buyer beware. And especially for my viewers in the rural areas or the exurb areas, just outside of the metropolitan areas. We're talking in Wisconsin, that means farmland. We're talking farmland. And so it's less expensive. It's very affordable for these, multi-billion-dollar corporations. There's access to water. There's enough space. And yet they would all be able to live, probably the workers, in the bigger cities, right? It's the draw of living in a suburb. So that's going to affect our rural communities. Okay. So keep an eye on that one. And then the last one, UW-Platteville is closing its Baraboo-Sauk County campus. And UW-Richland Center campus closed a couple years ago. This is a disturbing trend. And I think we can trace this back to Governor Walker's defunding of public higher education here in Wisconsin. My dad taught at the technical college here in La Crosse for 20 years. These schools are an important part of Wisconsin. Our history, the education scene, and our economy. These schools crank out tons of nurses and mechanics and ag workers and plumbers and carpenters and electricians and all that. They're also a way to make higher education a little bit more affordable. And third thing is they're really popular with the non-traditional student, the second career person who's a little older than your typical college kid. And if we lose those folks are not being served. Those jobs are not being created. Those are big economic drivers in our communities. And so that's too bad. It really is. And again, we need to make education a front and center voting issue. All right. So that's it for today. Check back later this week. I'm working on one to talk about who is running for all these state offices that are on the ballot in November 2026. All right. Have a good day at work, folks.